Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is training. The title is There Is No It, and we're going to talk about improving body control. So there's a fancy word called proprioception, which refers to the ability to know what your body is doing when you can't see it. So the awareness of what my hand is doing, for example, if I'm not looking at my hand. And this is a form of body control. Some people have it really well, some people have none of it. And everyone on the planet could benefit from improving theirs, especially when it comes to training. So how do I know if I'm using good form? It involves the ability to control my body into certain positions and pathways. So the more proprioception, the more body control I have, body control awareness, the better I'll be able to tell my body where to go and how to do that when there's weight on it. So this concept came up in mind, like the phrasing, there is no it, came up when I was talking with a client recently. We've been working on their squatting cues and how to improve their squat. And sometimes their body will move in a weird way, and they'll say, well, it kept shifting. Or, well, it went into its toes, or it did this, it did that. And I keep repeating, there is no it. So you are in charge of your body. The body doesn't move unless you tell it to, or it doesn't move unless you're not paying attention to what it's doing. So the body does not have a mind of its own. It only has a mind that is not controlling it. So we're either just thinking of certain things, so hyper-focused that we're not paying attention to other things, or we're just not paying attention to what we're doing. So most often, and of course this is 99% of us, we are thinking of something. We're focusing on something. It's just the body reacted in an unexpected way. And then it would be our job to say, okay, well, why did it do that? And I'm going to come back and fix the phrasing of it, okay? Why did it do it? And what can I change about it? That's typically the question we ask ourselves. But there's a flaw in that question. Is why did it do it means that it had a choice, it did things, and that it is responsible for the movement, okay, for the change, or for the thing we don't want. Well, if it did it, then it has to change. It didn't do it because there is no it. So I shifted. I went into my toes. I did this. I did that. Because if it's if it's me that's the problem, it's me that can fix. Okay? So if it's my fault, it's my responsibility, therefore it's my efforts that'll make the difference. So we want to be in charge of our body. We want to be the one telling the body what to do. So we have to take accountability when the body does something unexpectedly. That was either because we are unaware that that thing was, like, the body had the chance to do that movement, or we didn't know that that was a kind of like we were unaware that the body would do that way, or we were hyper-focused so much that we weren't paying attention to other possibilities. So the one thing I wanted to get across with the client is the repeated use of that phrase. So we've been working on something for weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months and months, and every time we run into the same problem or the same issue, the response is always it. Well, like I said, if it is the problem, the person is never going to make a change in their efforts, or they're never going to take accountability for the problem because it is the problem, not them. So what we were talking about, and what I would kind of go through here, is I want to give 5 tips on how to improve body control. And these are 5 things that you can proactively do to improve body control. These are 5 things that you can put effort into and make a difference. So if you're like, I'm not good at balance, like my body just always falls over to the right, or it always does that, or blah, 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 blah. So what can you do about it? So yes, your body might be not good at balance. But why leave it at that? Why not do some stuff for it? And that's what we're going to cover today. So we're going to cover 5 tips on how to take control of your body control. The first thing is to make a cues list. So we've talked about the idea of cues before in past podcasts. But what they are is singular words or kind of phrases that you would tell yourself while you're doing a movement to ensure you're moving correctly. So maybe when somebody gets under a squat bar, they might think, once their hands are in place, they might think to lift their chest but pull their shoulders down. So they're going to lift chest, shoulders down. And those cues, the words of lift chest, shoulders down, those are cues, okay, word signals to activate their body to do a movement. So that's what cues are. In every exercise we do, there are body movements we want to do, and there are body movements we're trying to prevent. Typically, we want to focus on cues of what to do that will help you not to do something else, rather than just focusing on not doing the thing. So we've all heard the phrase, or they might have heard the phrase of like the elephant in the room. Is if you're thinking of the elephant, like, well, don't say the like say somebody walked into the room you're in, and they had a really ridiculously large nose, and you were like, don't think of the nose, don't think of the nose, don't think of the nose. What are you thinking of? The nose. So you're not going to act yourself. You're going to try not to look at it, but by trying not to look at it, you're going to look everywhere other than their face, which looks ridiculous and weird. So then they're going to know something's wrong, and they're going to know that you're probably trying not to look at their nose. Then you'd be better off just staring at the freaking nose, because both of them are as ridiculously different than what you would normally do. So the idea of not thinking of something doesn't work. So instead, think of doing something that prevents that other thing. So you would say, I'm going to look at this person in the eyes. And that automatically would mean that you're not going to look at their nose. Whereas if you just say, don't look at their nose, don't look at their nose, you're going to look everywhere under the sun, you're going to look all around the room, and you're going to look weird. You're not going to do it right. You're not going to have the right type of conversation. Whereas if you say, okay, I don't want to look at their nose, so I'm going to look at their eyes. That way you can have a good conversation, the correct way of having a conversation, and you don't do the thing you don't want to do of looking at their nose, because you gave yourself something to do in place. So that's the idea of cues. You want to give your body what to do so it doesn't just do random shit on its own, okay, which is typically bad form. Now, part of making a cues list is writing down everything you do during the exercise. Not what you don't want to do. Write down what you do. And if there is something that's happening that you don't want to happen, find an action that counters that, and then do that. Then for everything that you do during the lift, you would sum up those actions into the fewest words possible, maybe single words or 2 words, units. So shoulder, like chest up, shoulders down. Chest up is one cue, shoulders down is another cue, because they're 2 different physical movements. Just because I put my chest up doesn't mean my shoulders would go down. So you have to recognize those as 2 different efforts. So for each effort, you want to have the fewest words possible that remind you to do that effort. You're then going to practice and repeat that stuff over and over and over and over and over. You're going to memorize it verbally, because if you can't say it, you can't do it. And then every time you do that movement, you're going to practice those cues. You're going to analyze if the cues are working. If they're not, you need to rewrite them and edit it. So it's a working document, a working process. You're always going to practice, analyze, and rewrite. Practice, analyze, rewrite. You're always working the information. So that's the first thing you can do to take control of your body control, is make a cues list and keep it active for the main exercises you want to get better at. The next thing you can do, tip number 2, is to isolate the weakness. So if you have a specific weakness such as balance, or if you have a specific weakness such as like weakness in your right hamstring, you want to find ways to isolate those things and remove any other involvement of any other concept, so you can hyper focus on what you want to think of. So if I want to get better at flexing my right hamstring, if I do single leg glute bridges, the only thing I have to think of is my right hamstring. Whereas if I try to do a conventional deadlift, I have a million other things trying to think of while also trying to think of my right hamstring. So whatever your weakness is, if it's balance, try to find an exercise that promotes balance only. You have nothing else to think of. You want to isolate out what you want to get better at. That allows you to hyper-focus on the feeling associated with that thing. You then are going to have greater awareness of what it feels like. Then you'll, over time, build greater awareness of how to correct it or adjust for it. So number 1 tip is make a cues list. Number 2 tip is isolate the weakness. The third tip is build a support. So what is around your weakness that helps your weakness? You want to make sure you build that as well. So it sounds crazy that we're telling you to isolate your weakness and get the other things uninvolved, but then you also have to get the other things involved and make them stronger because they protect you and they support your weakness. Sometimes the only way to get something stronger is to make sure everything else around it can support increased strength in that something. So if I want to get bigger thigh muscles, I have to make sure my connective tissues of my hip and knee can handle the forces required to build bigger thigh muscles. So I might have to do exercises and drills to improve knee stability and hip stability to then be able to build my thigh larger. So you have to build the support for what you want to improve. Not only isolate it so it improves on its own. Okay, so tip 1 is make a cues list. Tip 2 is to isolate the weakness. Tip 3 is to build the support. Tip 4 is to record yourself doing the movement. You want to see what's happening, not only rely on what you're feeling what's happening. If you only rely on what you feel, then you're only relying on your own body awareness and current levels of proprioception. You probably don't have very good body awareness. So why would you rely on that as being the only thing that can give you feedback? The only thing that can tell you if you're doing it right or wrong? Doesn't make sense, right? Whereas, if we film ourselves doing the movement, we can then see with our eyes what is happening. We can associate that sight with the feeling of what happened. And it gives you now more awareness and more control over what's happening. So you want to record yourself doing the movements so you can add the sensation of feeling what's happening with the visualization of what's happening, being able to see it. Then one of the benefits of recording yourself between sets of exercises is you can analyze what happened in one set and make mental adjustments, see if you can correct it on the next set. If it works, you now know that correction you made, that adjustment you made, is good, and you need to maintain that and keep that. However, if the correction didn't make a difference, you know to get rid of it and try something new. So it's how you can train yourself. Is you have the sensation of what you're feeling while you're doing it, but you also have the visualization of seeing yourself do it. So that's very important, is to record yourself in between your sets. The fifth and final tip is to get outside feedback. This can be from a training partner, it can be from a person at the gym, obviously it can be from a trainer, like a personal trainer or coach, something like that. But you can only see what you know to look for. One of my favorite quotes is, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. Meaning we're unaware of what we're unaware of, unless somebody tells us and now makes us aware. So when you get outside feedback, you get another person's knowledge, experience, and information. So like what they would do, what they thought, what they've done, their experiences, their lifelong kind of accumulation of information. So by getting outside feedback, it helps you know more about what you need to know more about. Okay? So getting outside feedback makes sure that you are not your own limiting factor. You may be doing the best with what you know to look for, but that might not be all that there is to look for. So these are 5 tips that can help you take more control of it. So if it is doing something that you don't want it to do. So every time you squat, you lean forward in your toes and you feel like you're being rounded over or pushed hard in your lower back. Every time you deadlift, your lower back hurts. Every time you bench press, your shoulder hurts. Why is my shoulder doing that? Why is my lower back doing that? Why is my body doing that? Why is it doing that? There is no it. You are it. You have the control. And how can you get control is using these 5 tips. Make a cues list, isolate the weakness, build a support, record yourself doing the movement, and get outside feedback. All of those things will help you become better. Okay? Now that could be better for sport performance, aesthetic development, it can be better for rehab, it can be better for whatever your goal is. So all of these tips apply to every single goal, even fat loss, even just general health. If the efforts you're going to put in, you want the best results, then you have to make sure they're the best efforts. This is how you can improve the quality of your efforts, therefore improve the quality of your results. So please try these out. If you'd like any support or any help finding isolations for your issue, you can always let us know. If you need any help finding movements that help build the supporting muscles or supporting aspects of whatever your goal is, let us know. If you want any help with video reviews as well as programming, of course, we're happy to help with that, so let us know. Our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. So if you need any help in this type of applying these 5 tips, let us know. Even if you don't want a service from us, just tell us if you're having any trouble trying to figure it out, and we'll help you try to figure out what the answer is. But if you want a working partner towards this goal, we're here. We're available. Just email us, and I promise we'll get you the answer. Again, our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. Okay, so hopefully these tips will help. Put them to use. I promise if you do any of the 5, I wish you would do all 5, but if you do any of them, they're going to help in some way. Okay, so again, if you need any help, let us know. If you think this podcast is helpful, please share it with family and friends on social media or share it in a text or email. Just make sure someone else's eyes see it. Because the more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can tell us at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.